Hello, my name is Lauren Hood. Today we'll be taking a look at and learning about CSS transformations. I want to start off with a side note. CSS transformations include both 2D and 3D transformations that both use the transform property. So first we will learn about the transform property on its own, and then we will go slightly more in depth with 2D and 3D transformations. We'll start with the CSS transform property. The transform property allows web developers to apply 2D or 3D transformations to an element. There are a number of different transformations that we can apply to an element that include things like rotation, scaling, making something bigger or smaller, moving, which when we do it in code is called translating, skewing, and so on. This demo here may help you understand a little bit better what we can do with the transform property. So this is a simple little example, but we basically have a yellow box encased in a div, which we can rotate with this slider here, and if we move it around we can see the degrees changing and rotating the object. And we can take a little look into the developer tools here to see the code that made this possible. So right here we can see that the transform property is being put into use with the rotate here, and if we scroll down we can see the degrees to which the object is being rotated. If we change it here, you'll see it changing down below in the code. Alright, so that's a nice little example for us to see what we can do with the transform property. Another neat thing that can be done with the transform property is animations. We can actually use this to add animations to our site. I won't be going too in-depth as to how to create animations, but we can at least look at a little example. So right here they are editing this element here to rotate around and continue doing so. While it is pretty cool, I think we should, at least for now, stay away from too many animations on our site, as it can cause a little bit of clutter and might not look so good. A better application for the transform property would be something like this example here. If we click into it, we can see that they have created these boxes with divs, and then they have edited them with the transform property to rotate and look like Polaroids. I think this is a pretty neat effect and a better application of transform. So with that out of the way, let's look at some of the property values that are in transforms. You can pause the video really quick to check these out, but the only thing I really want to draw notice to is that here for the 3D transformations, the only thing that it really adds is rotate. Other than that, all of the transformations that are for 3D transformations are also over here in 2D transformations. So we can just keep that in mind. Now moving on to 2D transformations. First, I want to talk about browser support for these. We'll discuss this a little bit more later to understand it better. But we will have to use prefixes for better browser support when using the transform property. We're going to start with the translate method, which basically lets us move an element across the page using the X and Y axis. We can see here we do this by using pixels, and in this example, the element would be moved 50 pixels to the right and 100 pixels down. Next, there is the rotate method, which allows us to rotate an element clockwise or counterclockwise by degrees. As we can see here in this example, this element is rotated 20 degrees. If we wanted to rotate an element counterclockwise, we would have to use negative values. Next, the scale method allows us to increase or decrease the size of an element by its width and height. In this example, the height is scaled by 2 times and the width is scaled by 3 times. If we wanted to decrease the size of the element, we would have to use decibels. Next, the skew method skews the element along the X and Y axis by degrees, and it can also be done individually with skew X and skew Y, but we won't be going into that. So first, we put the skew for the x-axis, which is 20 degrees, and then the skew for the y-axis, which in this example is 10 degrees. And this is what it turns out looking like. The matrix method actually combines all of the 2D transformation methods. It takes 6 parameters, and in this order we are able to change the scale x, skew y, skew x, scale y, translate x, and translate y. So we will just input the numbers in whatever order and place zeros as placeholder holders if we don't want to change anything. So moving on to 3D transformations. There is actually not as much browser support for 3D transformations as there is for 2D transformations, so we will also have to use prefixes for 3D transformations. I was actually a little bit confused with the last 2 browser support charts that I provided, and so I looked up this to help you understand which versions of browsers supported 2D and 3D transformations. If you want to understand this a bit more, go ahead and pause the video and check it out here. As a side note, many 2D CSS transformations also have 3D equivalents. As such, we will only be covering what 3D transformations have added to the transform property, but if you want to look at some more examples of them, you can visit these websites here. I'll also provide the links for those websites in the description of this video. So first, the rotate x method rotates an element around the x-axis, and it uses degrees to do so. In this example, the transformed element is rotated by 150 degrees across this x-axis. The rotate y method rotates an element around its y-axis, also in degrees. In this example, it is rotated 130 degrees around this y-axis. Next, we have the rotate z method, which rotates an element around its z-axis by degrees. In this example here, it is rotated 90 degrees. There are also some additional CSS transform properties that we can apply, and you can view them all here. If you want to read this chart, go ahead and pause the video, and if you want to learn more about them, I can't say I understand them too well, but you can go ahead and look it up and discover a bit more. Finally, I will list some of the sites that I found helpful or interesting in the description below, so you can learn a bit more about CSS transformations. It's a really interesting subject, and there's a lot that we can do with it. I would recommend looking at these 2 sites here, as they kind of show a little bit more of how you can actually use this for creating your websites. I hope you found this presentation useful. Good luck with learning more about CSS transformations and using them in your future websites. And thank you so much for listening. Bye!